Hello, today we're going to take a look at how to use the Border0 listener function to make Go web applications available. Before we get started, let's take a look at what a normal Go web application looks like. So in this case, I have a main function and we'll define first a little print statement for starting the server, and then we need to define a handler. And a handler is essentially the function that gets executed on every HTTP request, and in this case you'll just basically print, hello, this is the standard library HTTP server. So next up, normally you might use something like HTTP listen and serve, where you provide the 8080 port number and then the handler. But in this case, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to split that up, and I'm going to create manually first a listener, and I'll basically say the same thing, create a listener on port 8080, and then we'll start the HTTP serve function. We provide the listener and then the handler, right? So the same thing. So now let's give that a try. We'll start this, go run main.go. There we go. Let's open my browser, reload, and there you go. You can see exactly what we printed earlier. So with this, now we created a simple HTTP web server using Go in just a few lines of code. So now we want to make this available to our friends, our family, to your coworkers, your customers, etc. And so how do you do this, right? So you need to worry about DNS, SSL certificates. Maybe you want to put some authentication and policy in front of that. Want to make it available quickly and fast. So that's what we're going to do using Border0. This is what we're going to build. On the left, you'll see the end user. He or she will enter your app through the Border0 Anycast cloud, where we will enforce single sign-on, we'll do the policies, we'll do session logging, and then we'll provide the traffic to your app using those few extra lines of code. And that will make sure that you can get authentication, authorization, logging, and don't have to worry about things like DNS and SSL certificates. Let's dive in. To get started, we'll go to the Border0 Go repository, which you'll find under github.com/Border0 Border0 Go. And what we'll do is we'll just clone this repository so we can start using the example folder. So git clone is all right. So we go to the directory. So you can see there's a bunch, but one of the things we have here is examples. There's a few examples, including examples of how to create a socket, update, list, delete, etc. Reverse proxy, load balancers, all kinds of examples that you can use. So what I'll do is open this in my editor, and what we're going to be working on is this particular example, 06 HTTP listener. So let me open our favorite editor, and there we go. So we'll take a look at this example. So this example uses the standard Go HTTP server, essentially, but instead of the normal listener, we'll use a Border0 listener. So let us walk together real quickly through this code. So the first thing it does is create a policy. In this case, we have a function that we call ensure policy created. We give it a name, which is defined here. And all that really does is create a Border0 policy. And in this policy, you can define a number of things, including the conditions. And the conditions are basically a definition of who, where, and when. Who meaning which SSO identity, so either email addresses or domains. Where meaning IP addresses, CIDR ranges, countries, etc. And when has everything to do with time of date and dates. So we won't go over that too much here, but all that does is make sure that the policy exists so that we can then use it. So then we get to our Border0 listener or listen function. And so you can see there's a few additional with parameters, essentially. We can give it a name. So I don't know, let's call it SDK video HTTP. That's just going to be the name of this particular listener. It's going to be part of the DNS name. Then we also need to give it a token. Obviously, since we're using a Border0 service, we need a particular token to authenticate. So let me go back to the portal and we'll create a token. So you can go to organization settings here on your left. We'll go to access token, so create a new token. I'll call it dev demo or something like that. Recommend using the member permission group, and 30 days is sufficient for this demo. I'll copy that, and so then we'll go back to the shell, export this variable, and the name of the variable, we can define it, but I'll use what's in the example is Border0 auth token. Okay, so now we have a token. And then finally, we also tell the listener, use these policies, and we'll use the policy that we earlier created. We'll take a look at that. And that's it. So now we have a listener. We have a basic HTTP handler as well, which basically will print, this is the Border0 Go plus standard library HTTP, as well as the name and the email of the user. So what's special about this listener is because it's fully authenticated and authorized is that we can provide particular headers so that you can make and build identity-aware applications, so in this case, name and email. And that's it. And then we do the same HTTP serve where we provide the listener and the handler. And so you can see the listener is almost the same, but you have some additional flags to provide information around names and policy. So with that, let's see if it actually works. So here we say go run main.go. Oh, we'll have to go to the 06 HTTP directory, go run main.go. And this will create the listener and dial out. So there you go. So now you're connected to the Border0 global anycasted infrastructure. We've created essentially a global listener for you with listeners and reverse proxies all around the world. And now I should be able to copy this and see if we can log in. Let's go here. And as you can see, the first thing that happens is it will ask me to authenticate. Before I do so, let's really quickly see if this listener has been created. So I can see it here under all my sockets. It says SDK video HTTP. So that's correct. It's alive. We see that it's actually running. And one of the things you'll see is that this policy has been attached. And so take a look at the policy details and you can see, who has access to this particular socket. Well, just for fun, we can quickly edit it. We can say maybe Andre at Border0 is also allowed. You can also see you can add countries, you can add IP addresses, etc. For now, I'll just leave this empty, but I want you to show quickly what that looks like. So with that, we have the socket, we have a policy that was created by code. We have modified it slightly with here. And there's no sessions yet because I haven't logged in. So now let's log in. I'll log in with my Google account, let's say my Gmail, and let's see. There we go. So now it prints my name. Hello, Andre Tunk, atunk@gmail.com. This is the Border0 Go plus HTTP standard library, which is exactly this line. So as you can see, with just a few lines of code, this listener function, we created a socket with the name of our choosing, and we attached some policies to it, which enforced SSO authentication, and not just SSO authentication, but also, other rules such as IP addresses or countries or time of day, or even if you want to webhooks to your own services or PagerDuty status. Now, that's not all. Because we now have this, we should now be able to see this particular session here. So you can see exactly who is accessing your applications and when. So you can see it's me, from which IP. When you click here, you can see exactly why I was allowed in. And finally, if I want to, I can kill this session and you'll be able to see that this is all real time. So this has now been terminated. So if I refresh this, I've been logged out, right? So that gives you some of that real-time management of these services. So with that, we've now seen how easy it was to create a listener and how to add Border0 to your applications in a very native Go way. So to wrap up, this is what we built. We have our end user on the left. They were able to access this app that we just created using the Border0 listen function through the Anycast cloud. And what we got out for free was single sign-on, granular access policy, continuous authorization, session management, and fast user experience due to the fact that it's on a global Anycast network. So hopefully this was a good overview. Check out border0.com for more details or our GitHub for more examples, and give it a try and have fun.